Would-be college girl kidnappers. A little background information. My dad is a police officer and ex-military, and my mom is one of those types of people who worries about literally everything. This led to them teaching me how to behave in a variety of potentially dangerous situations, from code words to self-defense. I wish I were kidding, but we even have a plan for zombie apocalypse. Literally any potential disaster, we've discussed it. Fortunately, I lived a very safe life and did not have to use their advice very often. I am also an incredibly light sleeper. Even a text vibration on my phone wakes me up immediately. During the summer before my third year of college, I was living with a good friend of mine. We'll call her E. E was a very book smart but somehow had zero situational awareness, as well as a horrible tendency to be the most annoying person you've met in your life after having one drink. At the time of this story, I was 20 years old and she was already 21. This led to a few nights of me getting pissed off because she would choose to go to the cooler bars with her other friends, but I couldn't get into with a shitty fake. This particular night, we had talked about going out and had even gone ready together. Then right before we were supposed to leave, she switched it up and decided she was actually going to meet her other friends at a bar I couldn't go to, and oh, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell her that she couldn't do something like that, but walked away visibly pissed and went to bed early. I woke up at around 3 because I received a few texts in a row. Knowing it was her, I was extremely tempted to turn over and go back to bed. I sat to quick check and see what she wanted, and saw multiple separate texts from E that said things like, "Oh my god, wake up, please wake up, I'm in so much trouble, please help, etc, etc, etc. I asked her what's happening, and she tells me, with a lot of misspellings because alcohol, that her friends left her at the bar. They didn't answer when she tried to call them, and that while she was standing outside the bar trying to call her friends, 2 older guys asked if she needed help. She told them she was trying to get a hold of her friends so she could go home. These 2 men point to a car and say it's her Uber, and if she'd like, they wouldn't mind dropping her off at home. E decides this sounds like a great idea and gets into the car with them. One guy sits up front with the driver, and one sits in the back with E. This is obviously when things start to go south. E notices that they appear to be going in the wrong direction, and makes a comment that she lives the other way. No one says anything to her. Now the car has exited onto a major highway that you would take if you wanted to leave our large city for the neighboring large city, approximately 45 minutes away. This is the point where she starts texting me for help. I tell her she needs to speak up, but she's telling me that she's too afraid to say anything. I tell her to say that she's going to be sick. No Uber driver will want you puking in the car and will pull over so you can get out. She refuses because she's too afraid. E finally asks where they're going and they say, "Large city." She tells them that no, I live in the other city, and the guys laugh and say, "Well, just think of it as a suburb of the other city." Now E has gone into full panic mode. I've already run out of the house and am attempting to follow them. I have her sending me locations on the iPhone repeatedly so I can try and catch them. I'm repeatedly telling her to get the fuck out the car and do not get back in. I was flying down the highway, but they still had maybe a 20-minute head start. I wanted to call the police because 1, we obviously need help, and 2, I'm driving in excess of 100 miles per hour down the highway and do not want to be pulled over. Unfortunately, E can't even give me a description of what car she's in. No color, no make, nothing. I don't know how she finally spoke up or what she even said, but she was able to get the Uber driver to stop at the gas station that was, quite literally, the only thing around, like it was an exit to a gas station, just to enter back onto the highway. There was nothing else in the area. She's texting me to tell me they're pulling into a gas station, and I tell her to get her ass into a bathroom stall, lock the door, and do not move until I get there. And she can't do that, to go stand next to the clerk and tell him to call the police because she does not know these men. But I swear to God, E, do not get back into the car. I don't care if they carry you, kicking and screaming, you fight, and do not get back in the car. But of course, this is E, and she did not listen. She instead chose to hide behind the gas station. At this point, I was just minutes away, and I figured I can get there before they went looking for her. I was a 20-year-old female, average to shorter height and average weight, athletic but not a Hulk by any means. I have no idea what I thought I would do with these 2 30-year-old men and their Uber driver. I had also ran out of bed without getting dressed, so I was wearing fleece Guitar Hero pajama pants and a sports bra, no shoes. I pull into the gas station parking lot, and their car is the only one there. I got out of my car and marched up to the one standing by the gas station wall and, quite literally, went toe-to-toe with him, and in the best, low, cold, furious, angry voice, asked him where E was and what the hell he thought he was doing. The grown man couldn't look me in the eyes, and didn't bother speaking, but rather pointed to the back of the building. I yelled to E to get out here now, and we are going home. She comes around the building wearing only her bra and jeans, no shirt. I put her in my car and turned around to start yelling at the men, but as I turned, their Uber was already squeaking tires to get out of the station. E and I had a very quiet ride home, where I turned into my mother and told her I wasn't mad at her, I was disappointed. Oh, and she didn't have a shirt on because there was a hill behind the gas station that she fell down and into a bramble patch, and her shirt was covered in stickers. This story isn't as outright terrifying as most of the ones I read on the sub, but thinking about what could have happened had I not caught up with them, and just how easy it was for them to do this, chills me to the bone. So my friends, two would-be rapist kidnappers, let's not meet. For your sake. Strength in numbers. This happened when I was a freshman at college in Boston, about 10 years ago. The campus was urban and was in the middle of downtown, not your traditional college campus, kind of a cluster of college buildings on a city street in front of a park. The area's gotten a lot better since the school's expanded, but when I went there, it's a bit rough at nighttime. A few junkies and homeless people would wander around, and there are periodic muggings in the park. My roommates and I were up late doing homework, we were hungry and wanted junk food, but all the stores in the college building were closed, and it was a weekday, so our beloved pizza place wasn't open late. That left 7-Eleven. All the students were explicitly warned about college staff not to go to the 7-Eleven at night, especially alone. It was located right in the buffer zone between a rougher neighborhood and a college. The 7-Eleven actually closed for a few hours at night to prevent robberies. Usually there would be a few sketchy characters out front, just hanging out or trying to sell random stuff that was clearly stolen. Well, my 3 roommates and I, and being young college girls, chose junk food over personal safety. We thought that no one would bother us if we were all 4 together. We bundled up and did the 2.5-block walk to 7-Eleven. Our dorm was a straight shot down the street until you reached the other dorm, you turned, and then 7-Eleven was a half-block away. There was a big semi-truck with a trailer parked on the side of the street, so you were obscured from anyone on the street, but we reached the store without incident. There were 4 sketchy-looking older men out front, but we ignored them and went in to buy our chips, raw cookie dough, and sodas. The 4 of us walked out, and all 4 of the sketchy guys abruptly turned, fanned out into a line, and started closely following us. I don't remember much about what they looked like, but they all wore raggedy clothing, and I vividly remember they all walked with a predatory swagger. We immediately realized what was happening, but we were all dumb 18-year-olds and didn't know what to do but to keep moving. We got to the part of the sidewalk that was blocked by the semi, and started speed walking, knowing that no one would be able to see us if they tried something. Stupidly, we didn't run, as if that was going to spur them into attacking. Anytime we sped up, they sped up. We managed to keep distance between us until we passed the truck. We finally got to the corner, pivoted, and then ran into the first dorm, even though it wasn't the one that we lived in. The 4 guys wanted to follow us in, but saw the uniformed security guard at the desk and kept walking. As we catched our breath and shivered about our encounter, one of my roommates went to the front door and peered around the side. "You guys, they're waiting for us." The 4 guys were 2 building lengths down the sidewalk in a cluster, watching the dorm building. My roommates and I stayed in the building's lobby for 30 minutes, until the sketchballs finally crossed the street and wandered off into the park. I tried to convince my roommates to get a security guard to escort us back to the dorm, but my boy crazy roommate recruited a couple guys to walk us back instead. I don't know what they were planning, but I never went back to that store at night, even when I thought we had strength in numbers. The Campus Creeper. I just remember this encounter, and I've realized that, though I wasn't too freaked out by it at the time, I probably should have been. Back when I was an undergraduate, I worked in my alma mater's special collections and archival library as the combination circulation information stack maintenance person. This facility was actually in a separate building from the main library, and most of the building was either administration offices or classrooms. I worked the evening shift, which meant that most people had left the building by 4 or 5 p.m., except for the few classrooms that had evening classes. The archives were pretty quiet by then, especially on weekend evenings. While it was spooky, I enjoyed it because if all my duties were done, I could work on homework, watch YouTube videos with headphones on, or just generally goof around on the computer. The campus was also known for being pretty safe, so a young woman like me could work well into the evening without having to worry about weirdos. It was a great job, because on quiet nights, I was literally getting paid to just sit there and read cracked articles. One winter night, I was doing just that. It was 6 p.m., so most of my bosses, the archival workers in the back office, had gone home, along with most other people in the building. There was only one patron using the library that evening, a young woman, and I had finished all my duties, so I was having a good time just scrolling through a funny article and chuckling softly to myself. Suddenly, a man I'd never seen before walked through the door and saw me laughing. He smiled and asked me what I was laughing about, so I showed him the screen, and he laughed a bit too. "Can I help you with anything?" I asked after that. "No, I'm okay, I'm just browsing," he assured me, and walked off towards the stacks. He was a slightly older black guy, maybe in his late 20s, but he didn't look too much different from a lot of the graduate students at this university, so I thought nothing of it and went back to my reading. After a little while, though, he came back and started talking to me. At first, it was just innocent things like what year I was in and my major, and soon it became questions about whether I had a boyfriend and whether or not I liked black guys and what dorm I lived in. I tried to laugh him off, but the increasingly personal nature of the questions was making me squirm. Suddenly, I noticed that there was a stack of ILL returns that I had forgotten to put away. I was relieved. Maybe if it was clear that I had some work to do, he would leave me alone. No such luck. I scooped up the books and headed for the stacks and started to put them away, but he was close on my heels, too close. I tried to ignore him and focus on finding the right call numbers, but he leaned in, his face only a few inches from mine, and breathed in deeply to inhale my flowery perfume. "You smell really good," he told me. "Do you smell like that naturally?" I was bewildered and kind of grossed out. "Of course not," I told him. "That's just my perfume. I always put it on before work." "Well, my brother tells me that all white women naturally smell like flowers. I've never been with a white woman before myself, but he's fucked a lot of them." He grinned at me in a way that clearly insinuated he wanted me to change that for him. Let me add here that even though I'm personally white, I grew up in a multiracial household, so race or ethnicity isn't a big deal for me. But when someone starts pointing out race in order to sexualize it, well, that creeps me right the hell out and makes me really angry. "I'm busy," I snapped at him, embarrassed and furious. "I have a lot of books to put away, so please leave me alone." He clearly wasn't expecting me to yell at him after I'd been so polite earlier, so he looked surprised and thankfully backed off, leaving me alone in the stacks to finish putting the books away. I breathed a sigh of relief, hoping it meant that he left the building too. Again, no such luck. When I finished and came out of the stacks, I felt my heart sink. He was now across the library, leaning over the young female patron at her study table and getting way too close to her, his body almost pressed against hers. She shot me a panicked look, and I stared back at her with my jaw dropped. I didn't know what to do. I definitely didn't have the strength to take this guy on if things got ugly. I quickly headed for the back office, hoping that at least one of my bosses was working late, even though I hadn't seen anyone at all night. The office door was locked, but I pounded on it just in case, and to my relief, one of the archive librarians was still there. I quickly told him what was going on, and he immediately headed over. As soon as the stranger saw that there was still a man in the library, his face fell. It wasn't hard for my boss to convince him to leave. As I said at the start, I probably should have been a lot more freaked out, but I had a long day and a longer week, and I was honestly too exhausted to really feel much of anything once the guy had left. I sank numbly back down into my chair at the front desk. My boss apologized profusely to the patron, and then came over to check on me and offered me a cup of coffee. I guess my boss called security, because about a half hour later, both a campus security officer and a local police officer showed up, took down my name and took down my information as well, and asked me for a description of the man. I told them to the best of my ability, and they showed me a copy of a no admittance slip with the man's face on it, and asked if it was him. I said yes. The two officers then proceeded to inform me that the man had a long history of harassing and following girls at this university, as well as conning kinder students into giving him money and even rides in their cars. It had gotten so bad that the university had actually gotten a formal restraining order against this guy, so he couldn't come onto campus anymore. However, just a week before this, his restraining order had expired. He had clearly been counting down the days until he could come back onto the campus, and as soon as he did, he chose in a mostly empty building and found some college girls to harass. The campus security officer assured me that, since the guy had obviously not learned his lesson, the university would be looking to renew the restraining order once again. I felt safer hearing that. Campus security must have been really alarmed by all of this, because the next day, the RA of my dorm came to my room to check in on me and to make sure I was alright. Man, That guy must have been a freaker. She told me she got an email that day from the head of the campus security telling her what had happened that day, and they wanted her to see if I needed support or advice in any way, shape, or form. I told her that I was okay, though shaken, and that all I really wanted to do was forget it had happened at all. I love my awesome slacker job, and I hated the thought that I might not feel safe there again. Sadly, I spent the rest of my time there feeling less safe anyways. I'd often find myself looking over my shoulder when putting books away, or staring absentmindedly at the door, as if waiting for someone potentially dangerous to stroll in. I also made a habit of finding out if any of my bosses were staying late when I was working. Thankfully, it seems like the university succeeded in getting the restraining order renewed, because I never saw the guy again, and I didn't hear about any similar incidences around campus anymore. So, dear guy who liked creeping on girls at my university, I'm glad we never met again. And to my old boss, thank you for staying late that night. I don't know what would have happened if you weren't there to scare that creeper away.